Hello children, welcome to today's session of your English literature. So for today we are going to start with a new chapter, our second chapter, and the name of our chapter is The Foolish Donkey. What is the name of our chapter, children? The Foolish Donkey, Video 1, Worksheets 10, 11. Understood? So here we are going to come across an interesting story about a foolish donkey and its merchant. Its owner is a salt merchant. A merchant means a person who sells salt. Okay, so before going to the lesson, what is the name of our chapter? It's our chapter is about a foolish donkey and a salt merchant. Have you ever seen a donkey, children? No or yes. Some might have seen pictures, some might have seen a donkey in real, or some may not. So before going to the chapter, I am going to show you some pictures of donkeys. Now what are these donkeys used for? Now let's look at the board. This is a picture of a donkey. It just resembles the horse, but it is not a horse. See, this is a donkey. Now, as it is said in the story, we use donkeys to carry goods, to carry heavy objects from one place to another place. It can be of a short distance or it can be a far away place. So donkeys are mostly used to carry heavy objects from one place to another. Sometimes donkeys are kept as pets. Understood? We keep cats, birds, fishes and dogs at home as our pets. We even keep cows, buffaloes and goats also, isn't it? So in some countries, even in India, in some places, we keep donkeys as pets. Now, sometimes we use donkeys to travel. People travel on donkeys. Now, have you heard about bullock carts, children? What do you mean by bullock cart? A cart which is pulled by a bullock, isn't it? So, here we have donkey carts. As the same, a cart which is pulled by a donkey is called a donkey cart. Now here you can see a picture of a man traveling on a donkey. See, this is a cart, and sometimes we use donkey carts to transport heavy objects, okay, to move heavy objects from one place to the another, or sometimes people stay here, people use these carts so that these donkeys transport them from one place to another place. Understood? So, the name of our chapter is The Foolish Donkey. You can see a foolish donkey carrying a heavy object. I'll tell you later what it is, and you can see his master. You can see its master, and he is a merchant. He is a person who sells salt. Okay, so he is called as a salt merchant. Now let's move on to the story. Children, listen to the story carefully. Okay, now listen. Once there lived a salt merchant. Children, I am going to say a gist of the story and then we shall move on to the lesson. Okay, so listen carefully. Once upon a time, there was a salt merchant. A salt merchant is a person who sells salt. So, he used his donkey for his assistance. He had a donkey. And what he does with the donkey? He used to load sacks with salt. And he used to put it on the donkey, and he used his donkey to carry this heavy load of salt from his place to the market. So as he passes by, he has to cross a river. He has to cross a pond. So every day this donkey thinks, my master is making me to carry a heavy load every day to the city, to the town. So he feels bad about himself. He works hard every day, which he doesn't like to be. So once it happens that both his master and he was crossing a pond, and he slipped and fell into the pond. Now what will happen to the salt? When you put a little salt in the water and try to dilute it, what happens? You just stir the salt in a water with a spoon, and when you look into it, you will not be able to see the salt because it has dissolved. So the same thing happened here. The salt in the sack got dissolved. So what happened? The weight, it naturally became less. So the donkey, when he got up from the pond and when he continued his journey, he recognized. What did he recognize? That the weight was much lesser. So the donkey had got an idea to reduce the weight of his load. And what did he do every day? Every day when he reached the middle of the pond, he purposefully slipped and fell into the pond, and he waited till his master arrived and picked him up. And then every day this continued. But on the other hand, his master, the salt merchant, was really sad, really depressed about the less amount of salt that he had to sell in the market. And once he noticed that his donkey was deliberately slipping and falling into the pond, he got so angry, but he waited for his chance to come. The very next day, what did the salt merchant do, children? Do you know? He loaded the sack with cotton, the soft cotton, the weightless cotton. What happens when you dip a cotton into a water? Just dip a cotton into the water. What will happen? It will absorb the water and becomes heavier. So this lazy donkey, as when they reached the pond, what did he do? He deliberately, he purposefully slipped and fell into the pond. And what happened, you know? The cotton in his sack, all the cotton in his sack absorbed water and got heavier than ever. It was so heavy that the donkey couldn't walk properly. And then his master was very strict. He took the donkey to the town all the long way, and the donkey was carrying this heavy load. And then the donkey had learned his lesson, not to fool his master. Okay, now we shall move on to the chapter. Now listen to me when I read the story for you. So children, take page number 10 in your English literature in your hand. I hope you are with the worksheets. And when I read from the chapter, when I read the story, you have to run your fingers through the lines. So now when we move on to the story, what was the chapter's name, children? The Foolish Donkey. This is quite a big lesson to read because it's your literature portions. So please be attentive. Once there lived a salt merchant. He had a donkey for his assistance. Every morning he loaded a sack of salt on the donkey and went to the nearby town to sell it. On the way, they had to walk across a pond. One day, while crossing the pond, the donkey thought, "Oh, this load is so heavy that I will become exhausted very soon. I wish I could get some of this load taken off from my back. Just then, the donkey tripped and fell into the water. Fortunately, the donkey was not hurt, but the sack of salt on the donkey's back fell into the water. Both the donkey and the salt became wet. A little salt in the sack got dissolved, making the load on the donkey lighter. The donkey felt very happy about the reduction in the weight of the salt sack on its back. The merchant did his best to help the donkey to get up, and they carried on their journey. From that day, it became a regular practice for the donkey to slip and fall in the pond whenever they crossed the pond. This would dissolve some salt in the sack, thus reducing the weight and relieving the donkey of some load. The merchant was not aware of the donkey's cunningness, and this continued for a few days. One day, the merchant noticed the donkey deliberately slipping and landing with the sack into the water. "Oh, so this is the way I am losing my salt every day," he thought. He decided to teach the donkey a lesson. Next morning, instead of loading a sack of salt, the merchant loaded a sack of cotton on the donkey's back. As usual, they had decided to reach the market by crossing the same pond. While crossing the pond, the donkey, as usual, slipped and fell into the pond, hoping that after some time the weight of the sack would go reduced. As usual, the donkey and the cotton became wet. But this time, when he got up, the load on his back seemed heavier. "Oh, the load seems to have gotten heavier," thought the donkey. The donkey was astonished of what had taken place against the usual result. The merchant looked at the donkey and said, "Dear friend, I saw you fall into the pond deliberately every day with malicious intention of reducing the weight of the salt. So I loaded a sack of cotton today. When cotton gets wet, it will become heavy. Now you will have to carry it to the town." The poor donkey had learnt a lesson. So that is a story, children. Hope you have enjoyed the story. So there are many words which might have felt difficult to you. We'll come to those words in the next video when we have the reading in detail. So now let's move on to some meanings which is supposed to be in page number 13. So this is a story for you, children. So in the next session we'll move on to the meaning. So learn the story, keep the story in mind. So that's all for today's class. Thank you, children.